Welcome to The Digital Chair by Salon Monster, a podcast for indie beauty pros and salon owners who'd rather be themselves than follow the rules. I'm your host, Liam, and this week we'll be talking with Ivan Zoot about what actually builds loyal clients behind the chair today. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, fantastic. I am here with Ivan Zoot. I'm super excited to get to do this. Do you want to just do a really short spiel introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from?
I think you just did, but
Yeah.
the shirt makes it pretty obvious. I'm from Chicago.
Yeah, you are.
I'm Ivan Zoot. Some of the world knows me as Clipper Guy. Been around the business about 40 years, and I figured out how to do a few things myself. And then I spent the rest of my career trying to help other people figure those things out too. So it's been fun. It ain't over, but we're just moving forward.
That's right. I love it. That's awesome. Are you still based out of Chicago?
For a short time, I can make it publicly known here. I have lived in the greater Chicago metropolitan area my whole life, born in the city, live in the suburbs, but it is now public information that May 1st, my wife and I are relocating to Cincinnati, Ohio.
Love it.
Huge deal because I've been here my whole life.
Yeah.
But my older son moved down there about a decade ago in conjunction with graduate school and continuing education. My younger son moved down there for graduate school probably 5 years ago. They now both have wives, and they have now produced offspring.
Yes. Yes.
Time to go.
Yep. Yep.
I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter and maybe 12-week-old little grandson. And the coolest thing of all of this, and we've spent time down there. My wife and I bought a house down there a while back so we could come and go and visit. But the coolest thing about all of this is sometime immediately after I arrive in Cincinnati, I am going to get a job part-time in a barbershop, and the world will be able to purchase a haircut from me for the first time since we broke for the pandemic.
Wow.
I left a shop when we locked down for the pandemic, and business got busy and things got in the way, and I've missed it too long. And starting sometime in the second, maybe third week of May, the population will be able to purchase an Ivan Zoot haircut, which is a monumentous occasion for everyone involved.
That's like over 6 years now, which is sort of hard to believe it's been that long.
Yeah, March of 20 was when we shut down, and it's going to be May of 26. So,
wow.
That's not. I've been cutting hair. I've been obviously
No.
shows. I've been cutting some family and friends. I slay more mannequins than most people. And I cut my son's hair the other night when he was up here in Chicago visiting, and I came upstairs and I said to my wife, I said, "Man, I can't wait to get back."
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do for those in your listening community that may enjoy this, I am essentially going to live report on the experience. I'm going to post on a regular basis how many haircuts did I do, how many new customers, how many repeat customers, because I have a hypothesis that I am going to use my cutting hair to prove a hypothesis. And my hypothesis is this: despite the pandemic and despite technological advancements and despite social media and AI and everything that has gone on, I believe that the process of cutting hair for money is essentially unchanged from what it was approximately 100 years ago. And being the old school practitioner that I am, I'm going into, I haven't selected the right one yet because I'm still doing my research and handshaking. I'm going into an old school barbershop, and I will cut hair the old school way on, ordinary people. And I am out to prove that everything we were doing in the 1920s will build business as good or better than it did now in the 2020s.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be some you and I can check in. We can make a date to check in down the road. I believe with everything I know that my hypothesis will be proven accurate.
I love it. That actually makes total sense to me. I've talked to a bunch of people recently about this because, the pandemic, like many monumental events, shifts things and adjusts them for a period of time in the same way that the 2008 financial crisis shifted things. And, Instagram in particular had a big effect for a period of time, but now I feel like it's so saturated, and most of us in the hair industry have a tendency to make social media for other hairdressers rather than for customers and guests. And so I know I find, because I'm still behind the chair 2 days a week, that awful bright light behind us is my one chair studio that I share with a friend. I find word of mouth is still by far the number one way that I grow my clientele or maintain, however you want to put it.
Yeah, I do an incredible amount of reading, and one thing I love to read about is paleoanthropology, the study of ancient human civilizations and human evolution. And if there's one thing, and I've read a lot, and it's kind of a hobby and an interest of mine, should have been an archaeologist, but one of the things that I have taken from this is the idea that, and I think most people kind of have an intrinsic understanding of this, humans have not really evolved at a pace anywhere close to the evolution of science and technology and communications. Yep. And obviously in the next, the predictions are that in the next 12 months, the revolution in the impact of AI, we're not prepared for. So that being said, that's where I can say, I can go into, one of the things I got into this with somebody the other day, the tools that I use at my station in the barbershop in May are going to have cords, and they're going to be plugged into the hole in the wall. When I talk old school, I mean, that's where my mind is at. And like I said, I want to operate like we did 100 years ago, because I believe that intrinsically as humans, we aren't any different than we were 100 years ago. No. So when it comes to what it takes to cut a head of hair, when it comes to what it takes to take good care of a customer, when it comes to what it takes to ask for and enjoy the benefits of a referral, what it takes to convince someone to take home a bottle of goop, I don't think anything has changed. And, I've tried, especially because I have two of them of my own, I try not to do millennial bashing, but there's a segment of our industry and, interesting statistic that comes up frequently. Are you aware of the fact that, and you're in Canada, and it's hard to sometimes remember there's a border there, but the border is more porous, I think, in a lot of ways than we want to recognize. It's North America.
I agree.
What was I going to say? Oh, man, it just derailed my train of thought. Wow. I was going to make a really cool point, and now I forgot what it was. I don't know. We'll keep talking. We'll figure it out.
Through the power of editing, we can reconnect that.
Yeah, we can.
Right?
We can take that out. Yeah.
But I mean, you were talking
where I was going. What was I talking about?
Well, we were talking about 100 years ago. Things are the same, and you were talking about something you've noticed that might be the same in Canada, might not.
Yeah.
But before that, it was just really, we were talking about how you're going to use tools that plug into the wall, how people are basically the same, how we haven't changed in any meaningful way. Like, I feel like we possess a little more data, but that doesn't change us intrinsically. That just might change some things that we know, or knowing how a thing works.
One of the points I was making around that was this idea that, millennials, there are those of a younger generation who are very quick to want to point out, you don't understand. It's not like it used to be. And I think sometimes those are excuses for maybe why we're not experiencing the success we'd like to. Things are more similar than they are different, overwhelmingly. And
Yes.
and let's face it, we have the benefit of some tools, whether it's social tools or whether it's the technology associated with some of our physical tools or hair color science and some things like that. There's no questions we made some really cool advancements in some things, and that's why I always say, if I built my shop when I had my shop, I built my shop without social media, without smartphones, without YouTube, without so many of the tools we have today.
Yeah.
And imagine if I had the opportunity to build and leverage some of those, and don't think that I won't use a few things here and there, but I really want to try to. It's like if there's a book that I was reading, I want to try to go out and kill a woolly mammoth with stone tools.
Yes.
To tie it back to that, I want to do it old school because I believe I can.
Yes. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was about saying you don't understand. I feel like you're a parent. I've got a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old, and you don't understand just seems like a universal thing the next generation says about the previous generation. You don't understand. You don't understand how I feel. You don't understand what it's like. And that might be there'll be truth to it. Of course, I can't understand what it's like to be you. But to take it back to like some of the technology, and I think that there's benefits from some of it and hindrances. I know the fact that I had to build my clientele by walking around like an idiot on the street trying to get people to come in for cutting classes, as much as it was horrifying torture through portions of it, especially if I had to beg someone to get a haircut nobody actually wanted at the time.
I do those haircuts.
Yeah, right. But I also found that creates a resilience around, well, I'll just go get clients if I need to. Like, it's not, I'll just go out and, if they're not, not enough people are liking my post. Yeah. I don't care if enough people like my post. I'll go outside and go to the coffee shop and hand my card out to everyone there. And once they know me after 2 or 3 weeks, then they'll recommend me to somebody. And then this person, like, it's that networking effect that, yes, social media helped in some ways and holds back in other ways, can exist without it. You don't have to.
Yeah, them young kids and their music today, I tell you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, it makes when they sound young and we sound old. It's like that's a universal truth. There's no way around it. At a certain point, you start saying, "Well, when I was your age," and you're like, "Wait, did I just say that?" Well, I guess I did.
Yeah, the magical thing, one of the things that I share all the time, and you know this from your own experiences, you know this from exposure you've had. If a new client comes to you, the secret or the trick I've always believed is if you can cut them 3 times, you can keep them long term, whatever long term is. But it's not that first haircut. I think there's an impatience maybe on the part of some folks in our industry today that, hey, this woman came to me to get a haircut. She's my client. No, she stuck her toe in the pool. She hasn't jumped in the pool, and she, figuratively and metaphorically, and she hasn't gotten in bed with you yet. I've even had as part of my consultation, a conversation around, hey, this is the first time I'm cutting your hair. I want to listen to what you want. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to rely on your feedback, and we're going to make your next appointment today before you leave, and be prepared next time when you come in to talk to me about what you liked and what you didn't. And I will even go so far as to say the commitment I want to make to you is I can't promise you I'm going to nail it 100% today. But I can promise you I will nail it by the 3rd haircut because I'm going to get to know you and your expectations. So if you'll give me 3 chances, at the end of 3 chances, if you're not happy, I need you to go away as fast as you'll want to go away. But flip side is if I can make you happy in 3, we're golden. And, when you're new in the business and you don't know where gas money's coming from, the notion of 3 visits on a 6-week haircut, that's daunting. That's 18 weeks from now. These are people whose, in some cases, their idea of long-term planning is where are we drinking on Thursday? So, 18 weeks out, 3 6-week appointments is a commitment, but behind that is some big success.
Yes, agreed. I mean, it's a process. It's very rare, I find, to have someone sit in your chair and the first time you know you can give them and you execute the 100% exactly what they want. I want you to leave happier than when you walked in. I want you to feel like I heard you, and I started to really understand what it is you're looking for and what you're not looking for. And like you were saying, after a couple more times, if I haven't executed it, that's on me at that point. Like,
then we got
if
a
I
problem.
couldn't, yeah, I might not be the right person for you. And I've told people this. I've
Yeah.
told people,
Yeah,
I don't think
straight up,
I'm the right person for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite conversations.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
now we're crossing the line between my failure to deliver and my need to fire a client. Those are two
Yes.
different conversations we can have. But yeah, I've told people, you know what? Neither one of us are happy.
Yeah.
And it's time for a little hair divorce.
I wanted to mention, I told you before we started recording here, my sweet mate Britt came with me to New York when I met you in person for the first time at the International Beauty Show in 2024. I think it was March, maybe.
Yeah.
And she was just mentioning to me when I said we were going to record this podcast how she thinks about that conversation, because we had a conversation before you got started, but she thinks about things weekly that you brought up. There were a couple of things in particular she was mentioning to me. One of them was, if you're 80% booked, you're fully booked. Another was
full. You never want to be full. The full is 80. That air in your book, I always say, and what a perfect segue, my friend. If you like to pee and you like to eat lunch and you like to have time for take-home product conversations and you like to have time to suggest, recommend, and execute add-on services, the goal has never been 100% occupancy. I've always said if you're 100% occupied, if you're too busy, you're too cheap. That's the overbook. That's the price increase conversation. But there's also a level at which once you get cooking, if you're new in the business, this doesn't apply. But once you get boogieing in the business, there's something to be said for putting a fence around your physical and mental health so that you can live with some level of sanity. I always say it's the greatest business in the world until it's not. Clients are wonderful until you need to choke one to death. And we've all been in those situations. So that 80% is such a holy grail of busy, but not too busy, relaxed and effective, but not stressed and overextended. And so vital to so much of the math. It's really, I grew up in a household in which every single problem that ever occurred, the answer to the problem was, did you do the math? Because everything in life is math, which is troubling for someone who, barely got out of high school alive. I remember the first night of cosmetology school, everything about everything about haircutting is basic geometry. I'm like, I'm screwed.
No, I did not. No, I didn't even finish the high school and geometry when it started. Just like, is there a different story you can use to describe this, please?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. 80%. I'm glad that stuck with her. I'm glad that is something that has resonated of value because it's something I really try to communicate pretty consistently.
Yeah. Another thing she brought up was, a community, a barber community. In her case, she works a couple of days a week here and a couple of days at a barbershop. So she rents my chair, but she works commission at a barbershop 2 days a week as well. And she loves to do both those things. But the community around the barbershop is something that really resonates with her. And she was even just mentioning to me that she was considering trying to start up some kind of barber brunch that happens once a month for,
Did we talk about that barber breakfast idea?
I think you must have brought it up because I'm pretty sure that's why she mentioned it. Yeah.
Because there's two elements of community there. One, of course, is the barbershop itself. And I believe that in some ways detrimental to barbering success is the lone wolf suite renter kind of situation. She's splitting the difference. She's doing both. Later on in your career, maybe when you've done some other things, but certainly newer in the business, the ability to have, a few folks working together the client interaction, clients interacting with other clients, clients in the waiting room, clients in the service chairs. That aspect of community is powerful. And then the other side of it is recognizing that, in any town in North America, and I want to include my Canadian friends, in any town in North America, there's more than one barber shop. And the guy across the street is not your competitor and he's not your enemy. We're all in this together. And the barber breakfast idea, we did this in the community in which I grew up and then ultimately worked in the business. Every Thursday morning, all of the barbers in the area, there was a table in a large 3-meal restaurant, and it was drop-in. Show up, order some food, you paid your own check, you hung out. And you'd catch up on, of course, we're Northsiders, so we're all Cub fans. There's sports, there's family. How's your wife? What's up with the kids? But there was also, hey, I'm thinking about raising my price next month. What do you guys think? And I don't want to imply that there was collusion, but the truth of the matter is there was collusion.
Sure.
And
I'm not sure that's the collusion people are worried about either. That's not like gas. Well, I guess, yeah, you're right.
Collusion people are
okay.
All
right. Fair enough.
Yep. Price fixing.
Got it.
And we would all sit around and ultimately the consensus would be, okay, July 1, everybody's going up $2. And everybody would agree. And then you didn't have to worry that we were poaching each other's customers, things like that. The other side of it was, somebody would show up at the table and say, hey, I got to let you guys know, I had to fire Jimmy last week. We got a little problem there. And it wasn't don't hire Jimmy. It was be aware of what might come as part of a package deal with Jimmy. And you'd know that when Jimmy came walking in, you can say, hey, you used to work over at Mike's. What went on down there? And just looking out for one another as a community in that way. I can remember there was, and I was young at the time, but, somebody came to barber breakfast once and said, hey, did you guys hear that, Max at the barbershop, he had a heart attack. He's in rehab and he's going to be out for 8-10 weeks. And it was, all right, you know what? We got to pick up some clients. We got to catch up for this guy. His clients will be there for him when he's done. Nobody was looking to take advantage of the fact that a member of the community was hurt and down and this is a chance to grow my business. It was understanding there's enough for everybody. And, my shop isn't a good fit for everyone. Your shop isn't a good fit for everyone, but we all are serving the community and having some of that attitude. I think in our day and age, one common phenomenon is these barbers that will stand in their barbershop and they'll look out their window and they will talk smack about what's going on across the street at the chain salon, Supercuts, Tommy Guns, whoever it is that's across the street from you, they're talking trash about what's going on over there. And of course, my question for those barbers is, have you ever been in there? Have you ever gone across the street to introduce yourself? Have you ever bought a haircut over there? Because there's a really good chance that this is not the evil empire over there. Maybe they got some, because they'll talk about, those girls don't know how to cut hair. Well, maybe they don't know how to cut hair, but, that quickie cuts across the street from you is doing 75 haircuts a day. How many do you guys do? So kind of being open to connecting, and what is a podcast for? It's exactly that.
Connection. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting in the province I'm in BC, in British Columbia, the Massage Therapy Association, the RMTs, the Registered Massage Therapist Association, is really impressive organization. They've also made the education. It's a tough gig getting registered here. It's 3 years in school, and you're about 1 year away from a biology degree, essentially. Like it's that level of a thing. And as that association also dictates, nobody charges below this. This is the dollar amount. No one charges below. You may not come in and be an RMT in this province and undercut everyone. We all need to make a living. So it sounds like you're actually describing to me an informal association that's just getting together and saying, here's how we take care of each other. And
well, remember, I'm from Chicago. So if we go back far enough, we had in the state of Illinois and in other places around the country in the U.S. here, we had a barber union. The
Yeah.
barber union controlled pricing. The union controlled hours. It controlled days of the week. It controlled, because this is before, it's after. Moeller invented barber education at one point. Barber education kind of formally went away and then it came back. But apprenticeships, the union controlled how long you had to be an apprentice, who could be a journeyman that you could work under, who could be a shop manager based on tenure and experience. So there was serious controls over a lot of that back in the day. Now that no longer exists in the formal sense that it does. Of course, we have licensure here in the United States, and now do you guys have like what they have like VOQs in the United Kingdom? The voluntary occupational qualification stuff for continuing ed and stuff?
We have, I mean, it's probably going to be similar. Well, it's similar and different than in the States. And I know you've got a state by state system that qualifies people to be allowed to be a cosmetologist or whatever. I don't know if barber falls, if it's all under cosmetology or if there's a few different ones.
Some states are separate. Some states are single license. It depends,
and it's provincial here as well. In fact, shortly after I started hair, I had already done my apprenticeship. A new government came in and deregulated the entire industry. There's no legal requirement for a license in this province. There are in others. And in fact, if you can still do the red seal aspect of it, the journeyman's concept, like you can still do that. It just isn't required in this province. But in other provinces it is. There was no issue. There's no issue with, you don't have to retake an exam to move provinces. That's one of the things I've talked to lots of people in the States on this podcast in particular about that. And there's definitely some, shady aspects to having to pay a large amount of money to retake an exam that you absolutely have already taken in another form. I understand it from a safety perspective, and I also think it's a money grab as well. It depends.
I have an Illinois license. I've had an Illinois license for 40 years. Moving to Ohio, I had to provide the state of Ohio Department of Professional Regulation with proof of licensure and $300.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I beg your pardon, what's that for? Okay.
I know, massive hoop jump.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it's called reciprocity. They recognize and honor the licenses reciprocally, and they will issue you one. We have some variation state to state. New York is like 800 hours, and Iowa's like 2,200 hours. Crazy differences in some of the initial requirements and whatnot like that. And but generally speaking, they're fairly, especially with my level of years in the business. If you're 2 years into the business in Illinois and you wake up one morning and decide you want to move to California, they're going to make you do a little more because you don't have the tenure. So in that way, I'm grandfathered in a little bit in that respect.
That's nice. I like that. That makes sense to me. I mean, to have a little bit of room for.
Well, we have the continuing education requirements of a certain number of hours every 2 years during the renewal period in order to renew your license. And here in the state of Illinois, if you've been licensed for 30 years or more, I think it is, you are exempt from the need for continuing education. It's kind of a really honest recognition of, hey, look, you've been doing this long enough. We're not going to have you do continuing education because if you haven't figured it out yet, there's no hope for you. Yeah. And if you've been here 30 years and you're still sticking around, you're probably not a total slouch.
No, you've been licensed 10 times over at this point. It's fine. It's fine. And you're right. I mean, either you're not that good at it and no one's really going to change that really.
And, exactly. Or, you've renewed your license 15 times. I think it's time to kind of leave you alone.
Exactly. When we all know that you can be licensed and not good at it at the same time, like they aren't necessarily related.
Initially, when I got out of school, I was both licensed and incompetent.
Yes. That's not an uncommon combination to have. Yeah, I did. I was really lucky to do a legitimate 2-year apprenticeship under the federal government's apprenticeship program at the salon I was at. So I had, it was probably more like 2.5 years because I sort of slipped in as a junior at the beginning, but was still the assistant of the salon. And if you asked me at the time if I liked it, I would have said it was a torturous hellscape. And why did I do this? But I mean, I also ran the salon. I did the inventory. I cleaned the place. I did payroll. I took everyone's bill. I could run a salon at the end of that apprenticeship.
You got a grassroots level of exposure, for sure.
I was just barely adequate at hair.
What I'm in favor of is I love the 2-year apprenticeship.
Yep.
But I think on the front end of that, before the 2-year apprenticeship, it'd probably be a good idea if you did a 2-year mandatory stint in the military. You know, let's whip up some discipline while we're at it.
Well, I'd love to see it at the high school level. We do in this province, we do have a requirement of a certain amount of work experience hours that you have to do in high school as part of, I can't remember what the program's called anymore.
Vocational ed or something, yeah.
Yes. I actually think it should go a step further. And so rather than just the military being the only option, I feel like it should be 6 months of manual labor, 6 months of working in a call center, 6 months of the
food service industry. Yeah, there you go. Have you ever seen, this is cool. Have you ever read the book called the Do-It-Yourself MBA?
No, but I know that. Okay.
The idea is instead of, giving some university $40,000 a year for 2 years to give you an MBA, it was a book that was written a number of years back, and I don't remember the name of the author, but he essentially laid out a 2-year plan that was, spend some time learning another language, spend some time visiting a foreign country, make a $500 donation to a microfinance organization to help somebody in a third world country start a business, and then go visit this person in their country.
Yeah.
Do some volunteer work in a, work in a restaurant, work in a call center, do something outside in the cold weather with a shovel.
Yeah. I just think if you do a bit of everything that sucks in life, you will, first of all, be less of a dick to people. You know what I mean? Yeah. You'll be just less likely to give people a hard time. If I'm at a restaurant and I see somebody acting like a fool, giving the staff a hard time, I know they never worked in the industry. Right? There's no one, or even in the service industry.
My brother drove a forklift in college. His first semester of college, he drove a forklift in a warehouse, and he did it for like 6 weeks and then had shared, now I understand why I need to go to college.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You were gonna like waste your time all the way through college and not really try, and who cares, and phoned it in. And then you did that and realized, okay, so here's your other option. Are you sure that's what you want to do? And no knock at it. Someone has to do that. That is an important job.
There's somebody out there who's made to be.
Yes.
There is a forklift Olympics.
Yes.
Someone competes in the forklift Olympics and wins. And God bless that guy, because this guy is picking up dimes off the floor with a forklift. Because he's got mad skills. And I have respect for skill in any form.
Absolutely.
So let's not, I don't want this podcast to get us in trouble with the forklift union.
No. And I don't think either of us are saying that. It's just, you need to do this so you know what you don't want to do and how to respect people that do it, and maybe what you do want to do. Yeah. So I would love to say, I think it would just, it especially makes sense because there's something that happens in the cosmetology industry as a whole. It has a tendency to attract the person that either couldn't get into college or didn't really know what they wanted to do, and they thought it was easy. I'll do that. How hard could it be? And it's like, no. You're almost for sure going to quit in the first 5 years. Just as a heads up, statistically, you will not make it because you will not hack the hustle. The hustle, you don't even have to be great at it. You have to get busy. You have to be financially successful. It's great to be great. Like, go for it. If you can do it, be as good as you can. But that's not what will create that success.
That will not ensure long-term success. Absolutely.
No. So if, you've got a person sitting in your chair, they're 17, 18, they're about to finish school. They say they want to get into barbering or hairdressing in some way. What's one piece of advice you would give them? What's one of the first things you would say?
I get a version of this question all the time. I don't think I've done a podcast in which they don't ask. The version I get is a little different, and I'm going to answer that question because it relates to it. But you graduate from cosmetology or barber school, you pass the test, you manage to convince somebody to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. Those are all big milestones. You've achieved them. What is my greatest piece of advice for this individual now? And I think it's similar advice as it relates to success in our business. My number one piece of advice for new people entering our business is on your first day at your first job, lock your cell phone in the trunk of your car.
Yep.
Show up and be present. And
Yep.
this is where we start to hedge over into this, talking smack about the young folks, but you need to know how to look someone in the eye when you talk to them. You need to know how to engage and connect with someone who's physically present, not just someone who's on the other end of this thing. I've always said, if you want to use an online booking app, great. If you want to use an Instagram account as a consultation tool with pictures of haircuts, great. Go to the electronics store and purchase a $49 tablet.
Yeah.
Buy a cheap tablet that is Wi-Fi based, that you can hook up to the shop's Wi-Fi, have your booking app on there, and have your, what I call consultation Instagram. That's not your regular one. It's not your personal Instagram. It's not your business Instagram. It's not your hobby Instagram. It is a hair gallery. And it should be 3 pictures wide by 33 pictures long, 99 pictures. Some of them should be haircuts that you have done. Others of them should be haircuts that you aspire to do, that you find interesting, creative. They should be timely. They should be relevant so that you can drop some and add some later as a consultation tool. But it remains constant at about 99 pictures. Keep that in your shop and leave your phone in your car. So that you're not tempted to go doom scrolling on Reddit, so that you're not tempted to use your phone in a non-productive manner, because I think the default for so many people is, I'm going to build business on phone apps. And the answer is, for most people, it doesn't work, because the people who are really good at social media usually are not very good at hair. People that are really good at hair are usually not really good at playing social media, and vice versa. So, and I would, it ties to, for the person who hasn't gone to barber school yet, hasn't gone to beauty school yet, and is coming to me and asking for advice, my advice would be, if you're gonna do this, you need to do this about 102%.
Mm-hmm.
You can't half-ass this career. You can't skate through school. You've got to be 100% in on school, and understanding that. I used to use this example. If you and your best friend graduate from high school, and your best friend goes to 4-year university, and you go to beauty school, 1 year later, you have completed beauty school, you have a license, and you're getting ready to start your job. Your friend has 1 year of university, and they're in debt for $25,000. At the end of year 2, you have 1 year of solid experience. You're on your way to building a business. You're struggling. You're working hard. You're figuring it out. Your friend has 2 years of university and $54,000 worth of debt. And if you advance this forward, at the end of 4 years, your friend, you've got 3 years of experience. You've built a solid business. You're making, maybe you're making the American equivalent. Maybe you're making about $65,000.
Yeah.
Great. Your friend has graduated from college. He applied for and he got a job. By the way, that's getting harder, but he got a job.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a job at $65,000, the same money you're making, at the same time you're making it. But he also comes to the game with $141,000 worth of debt. Meanwhile, you have got an apartment, you're driving a car, and you're living pretty good, You're living like he's going to live in terms of dollars, but he's got massive student loans and things like that. And you've got 3 years of life experience that are valuable. And along the way, if you used some of your spare time, now you've got small children, and we talk, my wife and I talk about this all the time. It's the question of when we were first married and we were young, what the hell did we do with all of our time?
I don't know. I don't know.
If we got done working at 5:30, we had until about midnight.
Yes.
To, and I say, if I could have that time back, I would have another master's degree. I would have.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And then life happens and little ones show up. And now all of a sudden, no one has any time for anything. But my wife and I think we were married 5 or 6 years before, tricycle motor number 1 showed up. And what in the world were we doing? So if you're out of school and you're working in a shop, you're only working 8 hours a day. I say this all the time. You get 24 hours, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of screw around. Whatever. Sure. And I ask students all the time, I say, which 8 hours, work, play, or sleep, which 8 hours are the most important 8 hours for your success behind a chair? And they're all like, oh, the work. And then somebody will go, no. I got to sleep, man. I got to get some sleep. And the answer is neither one of you are right. The 8 hours of goofing off are the 8 hours that make you the kind of human that other humans would be willing to spend time with. Learn how to play guitar, climb a mountain, go to church, volunteer somewhere, go to do some school. Go to the gym. I'm not telling you what to do with the time, but I'm telling you that time is the most important time of your day. We know you're going to know how to cut hair. Even the kids that come in on a short bus will figure it out eventually. Okay, they'll get that, and we all got to sleep. But it's the be a fun human.
Yeah. And
I think the whole rest of it will all take care of itself.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Completely agree. And I don't. There's a part of me that wonders: is it possible? Is it possible to understand how much you can do in that time before you don't have that time? I'm not sure it is, but you should still just do something. Pick a thing. Like it's impossible, but you should still pick a thing. Go do something.
True story. I had an old man who was a client of mine and we've all had clients like this. The kind of client that when they sit down in the chair and they start telling stories, you're like, oh my God, I love cutting this guy's hair. I would cut his hair for free if I could just listen to him tell stories. And he had been a coal miner and a salesperson and, a merchant marine. And he had crazy life experience. And he says to me one day, old guy sitting in my chair, he goes, hey, you want me to tell you the secret of life? Now, when an old man says that,
yes,
pay attention. So he says, it's multi-parts, but I'm going to tell you the secret of life. He goes, this is it. The secret of life is getting 5 minutes in front of the equation. If I only knew then what I know now.
Right.
That's part one. If you could get ahead on, if you could know something before you know something, how many times in our lives have we said, geez, I wish I would have known that yesterday? Oh my God, life-changing. So he says, thing number one is getting 5 minutes ahead of if I only knew then what I know now. He says, thing number two is the day that you recognize that it's impossible, that you can't do it. He said, and thing number three is when you know that that's the secret, when you understand that it's impossible, you go through life with your ears open and your antennas up, still trying to beat the system. And I'm like, freaking magical. I'll cut your hair for free if you bring me this kind of wisdom. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the way you approach things. When the day I left home, my mom, we were living on an island at the time, Salt Spring Island, and my mom drove me to the ferry and she handed me 2 books. One was The Catcher in the Rye, which was a great book to just read about moving back to the big city on your own. And the other was called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And in it, the whole concept was, if you approach everything as if you know everything, you'll learn nothing. And if you approach everything with your eyes wide open, as if you know nothing, even if you know a bunch of it, you'll have the opportunity to learn everything. It will change your life. And I found that, I think it was 17. I found that really helpful. I didn't understand it when I read it, but every year of my life, it's made more and more sense. The more I know, partly the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. I know just enough to know I don't actually know very much.
Right.
It just makes life easier. Yeah.
I know just enough about stuff to be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I love it. How early in your career did you get involved in stuff outside of the shop itself, whether it be going to hair shows or education outside of it, or like at what point were you not just behind the chair?
Pretty early. As a beauty school student, I went to a hair show and I watched a men's haircutting, clipper cutting educational demonstrator sitting in the back row. And I said to my wife, I said, you see that up there? That's what I want to do. I want to stand up on stage and I want to teach people how to cut men's hair. Now, my wife, who's extraordinarily supportive, said to me, why don't you learn how to cut hair first, you wise guy? Okay.
That's a good partner to have. Keep you honest.
Now, the great story is 2 years later, at that exact same show, I taught a men's haircutting class, and the guy who I had watched was down the hall teaching a motivational and inspirational class. He went on to be a good friend and a mentor of mine. I am the king of fake it till you make it.
Sure.
I literally got into doing education, and education was very, very different a long time ago. Mm-hmm. I got into it as a revenue stream, as supplemental income. I did it to make money, and mm-hmm. I'm not shy about saying that. So many people get into education altruistically. I want to give back. I want to help people. I want to give back and I want to help people, but I would like to get a check while I'm doing that.
So I think so many people say they do.
Yeah,
I have no doubt they all say, and I'm not saying that both can't be true at the same time. You don't usually say I'd like to add additional time to my day to not make money, unless of course you're making 7 figures doing hair somehow miraculously. I don't know how.
Yeah. And for relative comparison, keep in mind, when I started doing education, it wasn't glamorous. You were working on a 4-foot square, 1 foot high platform on the mm-hmm. on a trade show floor. You were pulling people off the floor. Hey, buddy, want a haircut? You were working, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. You're lucky you got a bathroom break. And you did all of this for the grand total of $125 a day. Which at the time was kind of money. But and I've told people, when I was responsible for identifying, recruiting, training, and managing educators for one of the largest brands in the world, I used to tell people all the time, you want to be an educator, but I want to make sure you understand you will make more money if you don't go to the show and you cut hair in the shop for the day. Because we were not paying, money was not the reason you did that at that point. I said, now, are you going to get free tools, an airplane ticket, a nice hotel, a couple of cheeseburgers, networking opportunities? I can give you a great deal, a lot of things. One of them really isn't going to be a whole lot of money. And part of that was the speech I used to discourage some people. And part of that was the fact that I wanted you to be willing to work for very little money because I had a budget and I have to be practical. But I got into doing education, I wasn't 2 years in the business. And, I think it's one of those, if I knew then how much I didn't know, I might not have been foolish enough to get up there like that.
Thank goodness.
But thank God nobody told me I don't know enough to do that, and I can just wing it. But then, somebody told me once, true story, I'll never forget. I did a hair show and I was having a rough day. For whatever reason, I was not on my game. I was mumbling nonsense on stage. The whole thing was just a disaster. And back in those days, the salesman would be in the back of the room with a table selling, and I'd be in the front of the room doing the class. And, they would lock the doors because you couldn't leave the class because you were getting continuing education hours. And the class was over, and I'm cleaning up my tools, and the salesman came up front, and he looked at me, and he goes, "What the hell was that?" Because I knew that I had a horrible outing, and he knew that I had a horrible outing, although I don't think anybody in the room knew this. And I said, I don't know. He goes, in the words of Taylor Swift, he goes, "Shake it off, pack up your stuff, we're going to dinner." Mm-hmm. And I went up to my room, and I'm in the 37th floor of a Hyatt hotel, and I want to throw myself out the window. And we went out to dinner, and it was he and his wife, where his wife was there, and I went out to dinner with them, and I'm pushing food around on the plate, and I'm kicking myself up one side and down the other. And when we got done with dinner, I went to the gift shop in the hotel to drown my sorrows in chocolate. And on the way upstairs in the elevator, he said, "I just want you to remember something. Your worst day on stage is better than their best day in the shop."
Yes, that makes so much sense.
And I said, "Okay, we're going to do this tomorrow." And, I showed up tomorrow and everything was fine. But it was a necessary part of the process. And we've all been in situations where, you're struggling with the verbiage, the hair's not cooperating.
Yeah.
I could tell you horror stories. One of my favorite stories. This was in Houston, Texas. I'm on stage, Armstrong McCall, big distributor down in Texas, and I'm doing a model, and somebody from the show comes up with a young lady who's almost in tears, and they're like, "Hey, Ivan, can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "What do you need?" They're like, "Somebody promised her a haircut, and then they decided not to cut her hair, and she needs a haircut. Could you cut her as a model on stage?" And I'm like, "Sure, I could cut her as a model on stage." And so I finished my segment, and I got down off stage, and I talked to her for a minute. We decided we were going to do this little diagonal forward bob. Pretty simple, but remember, I'm clipper cutting. Little diagonal forward bob with a clipper. Nothing too tricky fancy. So I take her back to the shampoo area. I tip her back in the bowl, and I get her hair wet. And when I get her hair wet, it immediately goes.
Oof.
Number one, her hair was curly at a curl that was maybe a little smaller than a dime. All right. For our friends in Canada, that's about 1 centimeter. All right. About 1 centimeter diameter curl. Number one. Number two, her hair had been heavily lightened, bleached, and then had been recolored back down to brown.
Oof.
So her hair was chemically, now you can imagine curly hair like that, heavily bleached, recolored. You can imagine what that feels like.
Yep.
Now imagine trying to part, section, tension, and cut that with a clipper.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Now, it's wrapping around my fingers, and I'm digging it off my fingers with the blade, trying to get it to cut. And in that moment, I knew instantly why somebody else passed on this girl.
Yes. Well, they possessed more information than you did beforehand.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously.
And of course, I was quick to say, "Yeah, sure, I'll help you out. I'll do you a favor. I'll cut this girl." Oh. What a nightmare. That was the last time I ever endeavored to do anything on stage unplanned like that.
Right.
And truth be told, if you've attended classes with me or you know anything about me, I love to cut mannequins. And at the end of the day, it is because I have 100% control of the presentation.
Yep.
I can cut what I want, the way I want. I know how it's going to react and behave. In sales, there's an expression that says, you never do the demo unless you've practiced the demo.
Yeah.
And you know that it's good. Because if the demo fails in front of the prospect or in front of the audience, you've just trashed any and all of your credibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, and these are lessons, lessons from the archives. My goodness. They're mistakes that I will not make twice.
No, the nauseous feeling I've had so many times where you're like, there's no way out of, the only way out of this is through. That's it. Yeah. I have to go through, and it's going to be the worst through I've ever done. You just have to just keep going, It's not optional. You can't, I mean, on stage, it's not like you can walk off, go, I'm out of here. That's it. I mean, unless you're walking off forever, like in perpetuity.
I got this woman. She's got a shoulder length haircut, and I'm cutting a really shattered, really soft, really broken, almost like a razor cut pixie. Not the modern pixies with the clipper cutting, but an old school pixie. Mm-hmm. And I'm selling a texture blade for a clipper. It's got like scattered teeth on it, and it shatters up and breaks up the hair and everything. Andis used to call it a Model T for texture 24. Mm-hmm. It took out 24% of the hair. Now, I've explained what I'm going to do. I've talked through the demo. I've pumped up this blade about how magical it is. And I reach for the blade. Now, if you know the T24 blade, the non-moving blade on the back of this clipper is the same blade as what is called a number 1.5 in terms of its tooth spacing and its thickness. The difference is the internal reciprocating cutter blade. And I talked about what I was going to do. I explained what I was going to do. I shared what I was going to do. And on stage in front of about 300 people, I picked up the T24 texture blade. I popped it on the clipper. I turned the clipper upside down, and I fed it into her neckline. Except it wasn't the T24.
I feeling you were going to say that.
I accidentally picked up the 1.5.
So just gone.
And so right down the middle of her hair, right here, right down the middle of the back of her hair, just a beautiful, smooth, velvety taper. And of course, I had explained that I was going to do this soft, broken, feathery thing. And in the moment, in the instant that I saw this happen, I did two things. Number one, I turned the chair slightly to turn her nape away from the audience.
As one does, yes.
And number two, I launched into, do you ever have one of those clients that has a neckline that try as you might, it just doesn't want to wispy really well? So you can't wispy it. So instead, we're going to taper it up really nice. And I kept that 1.5 blade on. I flipped the clipper comb over, and I tapered in the bottom edge like that. And I think I did it so fast that maybe 4 people in the front row saw what happened. But needless to say, by the amount of detail I can share with you when I recount this story, it occupies a spot up here.
Forever. You can't let it go. Oh my God. Ivan, that is, I feel like that is exactly the mic drop story we should end this on. I'm cognizant of time. It's been such an absolute pleasure. I do want to touch base again after you've been working in Cincinnati for a bit, because I would love to hear even partway through what the A/B testing of life is looking like.
It's going to be fun. Whether my hypothesis turns out to be true or not, whether I have to, whether the old dog needs to learn some new tricks or not.
Sure.
I think it's going to be fun to share the experience along the way. And my hope is that it will also be inspiring for not only folks that have been around a while that have worked their way through the post-pandemic world, and I just remembered what it was I wanted to say earlier on in the program, whether it's going to be inspirational to those folks, or whether it's going to show that for new, younger people entering into the industry, a healthy dose of modern and a real nice slathering of old school can just accelerate the process. What I would love to come out of all of this, if I could have a wish, because this is not about how much money I need to make in the shop. I'm beyond that stage of my career. But if this could serve as inspiration for new people entering the business of what could be if you took your entry into the industry and you put it in what we'll call a success accelerator, that we could get people from 0 to 60 faster with a healthy combination of bring what you bring and let's share what some of the old school folks can do. So,
yes, I love it.
And what I was going to mention earlier, when we were talking about new young people coming into the industry, I'm not sure how the numbers bear out in your country, but I know that down here, it is estimated that right now, close to 50% of the practicing cosmetologists and barbers in America, half, never cut hair pre-pandemic.
Well, that's interesting.
We're 6 years in, and think about this. When you recognize that the pandemic, we saw people drop out that didn't come back. We saw some attrition. We saw some contraction. And we also, post-pandemic, have seen a lot of young people enter into the business that, when I talk about, I say this with audiences when I'm training educators. I say, when you get up in front of a group of young people in the business and you talk about pre-pandemic, they have no understanding of that. We take it for granted because been there, done that. But there's a whole generation. I say this all the time. Do you realize that over 50% of our industry has never delivered a service for a client where the client did not book online?
That's bananas.
It's bananas because online booking, I can remember there was a while back when online booking was kind of cool, and only the really advanced people were doing that. Well, flash forward to at this point in time, the only people that aren't doing it are your chains and your walk-in barbershops. And by the way, many of your large chains have some type of online queuing system, which is their version of online booking. So over 50% of our industry has never done a haircut that wasn't booked online.
That's wild.
Blows you away. When you start to think about that, you realize that for some of these people, their claim that it ain't like it used to be has some legitimacy to it.
Because it ain't, that's amazing.
Yeah. So when we talk
I'm going to be thinking about that all day.
You put out a podcast, you put out video up on YouTube, you demo a technique, recognize that over half of your audience didn't cut a haircut before the pandemic, has never cut a haircut that wasn't booked online, and has not lived in a world in which you could text a customer.
Wow.
I mean, I remember when texting on the original phones, when a bee was pressing the 2 button twice.
Oh yeah. Oh, I had that phone for sure.
No, of course we did. Of course we did. And back then, we didn't text because it was too hard.
No, it took too long. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to get in touch with you because I want an update partway through or when you're finished that.
You know what? Sooner than later, throw me an email and we'll put a date on the calendar for, midsummer, sometime after July 1, because that'll give me 90 days to at least tell you that A, somebody was willing to hire me, and B, somebody was willing to pay me for a haircut.
Love it.
So that we can prove this stuff works.
Love it. Ivan, how can people find you or follow along with this journey, or where will you be next?
IvanZoot.com is the website.
Done.
Ivan Zoot on YouTube. Ivan Zoot on Instagram. Ivan Zoot. My name, 4 letters, first and last. That's the whole world. Just go to Google and type it in, and we should be good.
Well, I sure appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks so much for doing this.
This was fun. I look forward to talking again.
We'll talk in the summer. Bye-bye.